If you've been listening here for a while, you know that I am fascinated by everything happening in the business of sports content, at least in part because I'm not retired right now, because what Meadowlark Media is doing is trying to compete in the space of sports media content. I can't help but find it fascinating when ESPN turns into a bit of a frat house where on Monday Night Football they're saying tits and again, and Pat McAfee is getting drunk in Ireland, and Shannon Sharpe has a sex tape. It's a super interesting time to see what happens when athletes converge on what used to be a journalistic space and kick down the door on, we're here now, and McAfee goes begrudgingly to a meeting on campus with journalists he doesn't like and that he says don't like him. Because, of course, the athletes are a threat to everything that's been the standard in this industry for a while.
To be fair, McAfee is one down in terms of journalists he doesn't like who don't like him. You don't have to worry about that anymore.
How do you mean? Oh, because he knocked out Woj, and he knocked out Woj while using Shams, which was interesting. And Woj has Pitaro as a giant ally. I mean, he's got the president of the company is responsible for everything that's happened with Woj, and McAfee was using Shams, his nemesis, on ESPN in the afternoon when, and Amin left this part out. A lot of people don't know this, and it's a little early for it because we're celebrating the pioneering career of Woj. But Woj was really vindictive about how he carved out the space on ESPN for where it is that people would and could be used around basketball, and he consolidated all of the power. I'm saying that, not Amin. I know that because I've talked to too many people at ESPN who were afraid of falling on the wrong side of Woj.
Also, it's never fun when you find out where in the pecking order you are. You think you're number one, and then all of a sudden someone walks in and says, hey, I want to put Shams on my show every week, and you can't do nothing about it, and your big brother can't do nothing about it. That's got to be a jarring situation.
Imagine that, okay? Just in the minutia of silly sports media stuff. Woj's ally is the president of the company, but McAfee's got the relationship with Iger. That's the head of Disney, and McAfee had to get in there and be rented, not owned, under the understanding, because he cares deeply about his audience and not changing because Disney makes him change. So he says, I'm going to do it. You got to let me do it the way that I want to do it. You got to let me curse. You got to let me do the things I want, which include Shams, Woj's nemesis. When Woj was controlling where everybody was, like, don't get this part twisted. If people were appearing somewhere on the network, Woj had a hand in how it is that was happening.
And the opposite. If people weren't appearing on the network, there was that too.
That part's more damning. Isn't it? Like, I just feel like it's the first part what Dan said, that's kind of normal, I think, of creating opportunities for people. It's the
removal of opportunities,
that's
the suppression of opportunities. Yeah,
it's real power. Okay, Woj was a power broker, Pitaro's a power broker, McAfee's a power broker, and Iger is the biggest of the power brokers. But the reason I bring all of this up, okay, as we all compete in this space, and I know you guys get tired of me talking about it, but as I said, it's been a singular obsession. I've never cared about the business of money before this, because I just wanted to speak at the microphone and do the writing, but now we're responsible for trying to compete in this space, and we're trying to do it by doing it differently. One of the frustrations that I had as I came up in the business, Amin, is that I was perpetually explaining to people the difference between a beat writer or a reporter and what it is that I was doing as a columnist. I always had to explain it, and people's eyes would glaze over. The beat reporter is interested in news, in facts. It's not about analysis. It's not about opinion. I was explaining this all the time, and I might as well have not been, because it didn't matter that I was explaining it to athletes and everyone else alike. I don't believe that when people are consuming most sports coverage that they're being any kind of discerning. They're just trying to rest their mind, and maybe something on the television is interesting or entertaining, but they're not making much of a distinction, I don't think, between the generalist, as you said, because it's not possible for Stephen A. Smith to know everything about everything. It's not possible to be one of the, I mean, I know he sounds like it, but it's not possible to be somebody who is thoroughly informed on all the sports the same way. There's a reason that there are Ariel Helwani can exist in one sport.
Right.
He can, and he's talented enough to do that in a couple of sports, but he can't do it in all sports.
No. And it's like when Adam Schefter was doing sideline NBA games. I was like, look, there's no shortage of people that we have at the network who are qualified, who have done this job, who want that job, who want more opportunities, more reps at that job. And because Adam Schefter played fantasy basketball with Chris Paul or whatever, fantasy football with Chris Paul, he's like, I kind of got into this NBA thing. I want to do this sideline stuff. I'm like, you're demeaning the position. Like, this isn't like just something that anyone walks in and does. This is something that requires an acumen, connections, and a dedication to it. So, I mean, I would propose to you right now, we can define all the different roles, right? You have a show host, a studio show host. Their job is to make great television. How do I keep the conversations balanced? How do I get all the voices in there? When do we move on to the next topic? All right. So think of your Chris Fowlers. Think of your Mike Greenbergs. That's
Stugotz's.
Your Pablo Torres.
Right. Sure.
Why'd you roll your eyes at Pablo Torre?
This guy. Does he really move on to other topics?
He's one of the star hosts of Meadowlark, and you're sitting there mentioning all the other people at other companies.
I'm always smiling.
I'm too sweet to be sarcastic, Dan. All right, so next you have your analysts. Now, analysts come in different flavors. You have your former athletes, you have your former coaches / front office people, and then you have people who have been reporting and digging into this area for so long that they've almost like in the newspaper version, they've graduated from beat writer to columnist. So Stephen A. Smith would be an example, right? Stephen A. Smith, anytime anything NBA happens, it's not just because Stephen A. Smith is a magnetic personality. It's also because he has bona fides. He covered the NBA for a very long time. He is very connected in that world. So when he sits down in an analyst seat, that's why he gets to do that. Max Kellerman on boxing, right? He is so deep and connected in that world, even though he is not a former boxer or a boxer training or whatever. We accept that his knowledge is so deep and runs back so far that he can sit in that analyst seat, right? Then you have reporters, and these are your newsbreakers, your Schefters, your Passons, your Chris Hayneses, your Shamses. These are the guys that are going out there, getting information, and then breaking it to us. When Shams tells us something, when Chris Haynes tells us something, when Jeff Passan tells us something, 99% of the time.
It's always right.
Not only is it right, why is it right then? Because they're not telling you their opinion. I'm not telling you, I think it's going to be 92 degrees today. They're telling you, I just checked the thermometer. It's 92 degrees right now. That's what they're telling you, which is different from me and you saying, I think it's going to be hot today. We've had a crazy hot streak the last week.
You're making distinctions, though, that I believe the average person watching sports television is simply saying to themselves, I could do that. I have had no training in any of these things. I can do every one of those jobs that's being done up there. Maybe some of them are saying I'm too shy to do it. But that I don't believe that they believe that there's any special training that goes into much of anything that is on television when it comes to sports expertise.